Welcome to the final event of the 2021-22 Visiting Writers Series. Thanks as always to the English Department and the Division of Arts and Humanities for supporting readings by living writers. And a special thanks to Dean Kareem Nass and President John Swallow for arranging the visit by tonight's reader, Sadiq Fofana, who is also visiting classes at Carthage, at local schools, and participating in community events. We're really thrilled to have him here for a few days for our kind of residency at Carthage. After the reading tonight, we'll invite you to stay for question and answer and some conversation after we hear a story. Sadiq Fofana is a graduate of NYU's MFA program and also a high school English teacher in Brooklyn. His work has appeared in the Sewanee Review and Granta. He was also named a fellow at the Center for Fiction in 2018. Stories from the tenants downstairs, and there are postcards out front to remind you that it's coming out in August. Pre-orders may be available now, for all I know. Pre-orders are available now, so get it. It's important. If it's going to be on the bestseller list, you got to get those pre-orders in. So I'm sure you're going to want to read this book. It's a short story collection composed of 8 narratives intertwined about the residents of a fictional building in Harlem, and republished by Scribner in August. And we were talking earlier about the ways things come together and that start separate and then become a single entity, and the things that are revealed by those connections as one makes work. So I'm excited to read this book when it comes out. And also excited that tonight we get to hear, before it comes into the world as a book, we get to hear one of these stories. The collection of which Lori Moore, former Wisconsinite, maybe current Wisconsinite for all I know, has said the stories have a brilliant architecture that can go unnoticed beneath the carefully textured voices. Mr. Fofana has an acute ear and a perfect eye, and he doesn't rush. I particularly like that last. Those of you who know me that know I like to do things slowly. Please open your ears and eyes and welcome Sadiq Fofana.
Thanks, Rick, for that great intro. Yes, put us all at ease here. And cool. So, thanks for the invitation. Very excited to read part of the story for you. It's been a great week. Thanks for welcoming me to Carthage. So this story.
I'm going to just adjust the microphone, because if it gets too close, it does this like buzzing thing.
Okay, cool.
Can people hear? Sorry about that, but I don't want you to have to hear audio fuzz.
Yeah, no, thanks for that adjustment. Yeah. This is called The Rent Manual, and it's about a young woman named Mimi, and she's just trying to make rent, and she's having a very difficult time. Definitely been in that situation before. In New York, the rent can be high. The rent can be high. And so I'm just gonna, let me set my timer for, we said 25? I'll just read until the timer goes off. All right. Days left, 10. Money you got, $0. Money you need, $350. Slip is gonna come in the mail, like I do every month, with the Lysol and the Save the Children envelope, looking regular as hell. It's gonna have your name on it, Michelle A. Sun, and it's gonna say balance. And it's gonna say when the balance is due, first of the month. Read the slip to yourself, scream shit, and stub your toe on the kitchen table. The man in 14C gonna hit the wall. Hit the wall back. Banneker Terrace on 129th and Fred Dove ain't pretty, but it's home. Until now, it's been the same since you moved here when you was pregnant with Fortune. One long gray-ass building. 25 floors, 300 silent apartments, 4 elevators that got minds of their own, laundry full of machines that don't wash clothes right, bingo room that the old folks hog up, and a trash chute that smell like rotten milk. Little bit of everybody here. Young people with GEDs, old people with arthritis, folks with child support payments, uncles in jail, aunties on crack, cousins in the blood, sisters hoeing. That's what everybody want to concentrate on. The shit that be happening 1% of the time. Like that boy that got molested and thrown off the roof. Niggas still talk about that like it happened 5 times a week. Don't nobody want to talk about the cookouts with beer and wings and aluminum flying off the grill, and you be smelling it and thinking, can I get a plate? The summertime when the souped up Honda Civics bumping Lil Wayne be rooming through the back parking lot, leaving tire marks. The dudes who be shirtless on small bikes trying to get Najee or some other snot nose to run to the store. How you take a folding chair outside and cornrow people's hair from sun up to sundown for $25 a pop and make a killing. Don't nobody want to discuss that. You didn't come up here for no shoot-ups. You came here to make a good life on your own. You were 25 and you couldn't be living with your mother and sister in the Abernathy houses no more. Plus Swan, Fortune's father's here. You gonna go over there and live by yourself? Yeah, my ass. That's what I said, Ma, didn't I? Chase after a man who don't want to do nothing with no baby. How you gonna make for rent? I'm gonna get a job like responsible people. I heard that before. Remember them last words as you study that rent slip again. Don't try to hold the tears in because you can't. Go in the bathroom, rub the snot out your eye. Fortune gonna barge in as soon as you try to close the door. How you doing, mommy? Fine, baby. You don't look fine. How you know? You a doctor? I know something that make you happy. What? He gonna flap his wings going ear to ear like Amelia Earhart. God bless that child. You didn't think nothing of it when he was 3 years old and licking beads from the walls after his baths. A year later, he was talking funny, and the doctor said he got lead poisoning. He asked, "Did you expose him to lead?" He said it like you was a trashy mother, and you blacked out. And when you came to, there were 3 security guards with their hands on your titties restraining you. Fortune still slapping around, flying into your purse. Smack his hand. A $10 bill you ain't know you had drop out. It's a start. His backpack's open and there's a box that spill out too. What the hell is this? Candies the school want us to sell? What they need money for? I gave them money for uniforms last Tuesday. I don't know. Can't stand that school. Always want money and it's always a special class they want it from. Mommy, am I gonna sell it soon? They don't want you to sell it, baby. They want me to. Last month, instead of putting money on the side, you bought this pair of Gold Eagle bookends that you seen at Brookstone. Now, did you need that? Do you even got books in the house? Or was it just something nobody got in their apartment, especially not Shima? It ran you $400 and you said, that's it. After this, I'm putting part of my next check away. You didn't. You bought Louis Vuitton bags, Jordans, leather booty pants, open-toed spaghetti strap shoes you ain't never wore, and an Xbox you ain't never played. Social worker visited Fortune at home in apartment 14D, seen the 50-inch TV on the wall next to Fortune's fingerprints, and was like, that's a pretty pricey model. And you said, I work real hard and I can buy whatever I want. Days left 8. Money you got $10. Money you need $340. Call Shima up. She your bestie since 9th grade when y'all skipped 8th period together. Your English teacher called you two the Glamour Girls. When you did go to class, all you did was paint your nails and kiss up your lipstick. The assistant principal used to stare at your booties, and the janitor got a hard-on one time and tried to follow y'all home. Shima got a thick scar on her forehead because one of her drunk uncles burned her with a cigarette. But she's still fine. Almost finer than you. Y'all are cool even though you graduated and she didn't. Even though you got a career waitressing and doing hair and she be in jail every full moon. You never been arrested. You've been known to put your hands on dudes, but they don't never press charges. Everything you got is 100% you. You don't have problems. People are supposed to tell you theirs. Mimi, my EBT card run out. Mimi, my baby girl swallowed roach poison. Mimi, come to my rent party. Somehow, Shima got it together though. She got her daughter Tai-Kai a Louis Vuitton rhinestone jacket, and she got enough to pay you $50 a month to braid Tai-Kai's hair. How's it over at Banneker? She gonna ask on the phone, all nosy. Heard they over there trying to nickel and dime people. I ain't felt it, to be honest. A pause when y'all both is doing nothing but breathing on the line. Then Shima gonna say, saw your mom and sisters on their way to Costco. Your mother almost got hit by a car trying to wave me down. She heard about people being pushed out and was like, how Mimi doing? I said, fine, I guess. Then she was like, no, really, how's she doing? Mimi, you did not tell me your mother had all the kids living in that place. Tell her your mom ain't crazy. She's a witch who wants you to become a welfare robot like her. You told her, or she told you, to drop out of school, and you had to say no. She wants you to be like your sisters, making macaroni and putting their nasty undone toes on the food tray. If she and your sisters want to sit around fat with bad skin, watching SpongeBob and waiting for some check, they can do that. Meanwhile, you're gonna have enough to move to Westchester. Hell, some of your sister's kids might be able to move in, provided they start with that mashing Cheerios all over the floor. Shima gonna ask, what time do you want me and Tai-Kai to come by? Huh? You still doing her hair, right? Yeah. Wednesday? Make it Tuesday. You love Shima, cause she give you complete creative control over her daughter hair. But she don't know you about to charge her $100 when you see her. Roscoe's, where you work, is the bangingest soul food joint in all of Harlem. Everybody done had themselves a plate there. They got pictures all against the wall of Roscoe Sr. when he was alive, one with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one with that bald-head guy from the Cop Show. People see the wobbly tables and no AC and they want to grumble. But when that catfish comes steaming out the back, it's a whole different story. Greet your co-workers. What's up, Mustafa? Hey, Lanice. Walk by Diabla and say nothing. That's your name for Vivian. The Dominicans taught you that. Pretend to wipe down some tables and stack some menus, but you don't really work for the first few hours. Group of construction workers gonna come in at 11:30 with hammers on their belts and paint in their fingernails. They got muscles and stomachs. One of them will be picking his teeth like what he got between them is a piece of you. Oh, this hard hat, he gonna say? This hat is to let pretty things like you know that I got a job. Laugh like it's the funniest shit you ever heard. I like that ponytail and that tattoo up your leg, the other one's gonna say. Say thank you and tell him his biceps ain't bad either. But they could lift you up and bounce you around. Be like, that they could. Then act like your titties is loose and you can't control them. I like this one. She fun. What's your name? Mimi? Mimi, we like you. You ain't afraid to talk. Never forget the day 4 years ago on 110th and Fred Douglas when Bernie, your boss-to-be, spotted you while you was in a hurry to scoop Fortune from daycare. You was clickety-clacking up past the 99-cent bins by the Israelites with aluminum foil on their heads who always be screaming out that God is black. Bernie and his pasty self, this is before he got stained, flagged you down and was like, how would you like to be our franchise player? The next week he put you on 3 back tables and in 1 hour you had customers ordering Long Island iced teas and pork chops and applesauce, throwing up on themselves. Customers wasn't requesting waitresses before you got there. Anyway, serve those construction dudes their meal, smothered chicken, candy yams, and mac and cheese with that extra cholesterol, Hard Hat will say. Watch them eat, cuss, and laugh like a pair of razors. When they done, lean in slow to scoop their plates and brush one of them on the back by accident on purpose. Draw hard on the bill and drop it on the table. On his way out, Hard Hat will corner you by the buffet. Pretend you're surprised. We put $20 each in your tip cup, he gonna say. Look up and thank whoever. One catch though. What's that? You gotta let me put it anywhere. Say yeah before you can say no. He might untie your apron and shove it down your coochie. Wonder if you would slap him or not. Fortunately, he gonna tuck it in the part of your apron where he think your bra at, and then pat it before he leaves. Feel Diablo staring at you. That's how much it costs to scoop $60 in 10 minutes. But take it out your apron and walk it over to the tip glass. Wait for your share at the end of the day. When Bernie counted all the money with his pinky, call yourself a fool for obeying that rule. Days left, 7. Money you got, $50. Money you need, $300. Go downstairs with Fortune to pay Swan a visit in 6B. His hallway is hot and it smells like brown lettuce. It's 12 o'clock, but that motherfucker's in there. He probably on Warstar Hip Hop watching the video of that dude shooting himself on the elevator. Don't knock on his door all haywire. Knock on it slow and sexy. Chain latch, deadbolt, bottom lock. Swan in white socks and slippers, squinting like the hallway is blinding him. Don't hide the 10 pounds you got on him. And if I came upstairs busting up in your crib, I'd be wrong, he gonna say. Say, Fortune said he wanted to see his daddy, so I took him to see his daddy. Fortune never said that. And the way Swan is scratching the veins on his neck, he know that too. You forgot how lean he is and how much muscle he got for those twiggy arms and how ugly but cute that scruff on his chin is. Let him pout with those same black lips that used to kiss all up on your shoulder blade. Let him not say one word to you and pull his son in his apartment by the head. Then let him stand aside to allow you in too, like he's some gentleman. People always gonna wonder how he got you. He's not a talker, and parts of his face look swollen. But guess what? All the fine niggas ain't got self-esteem. It's always the niggas that got no business. The bums, the busted cats, the jobless ones, the all the above niggas that wanna spit. You was at Mayella's house party and all of the brolic cats was huddled on the side of the room on some middle school shit. And Swan was the only one who brought you a beer. He was like, I wanted to introduce myself. I swear, that's all. You thought it was mad cute when you shook his hand and it was all clammy. You also thought it was cute the third time he was in his crib watching The Simpsons and you pulled your panties down for him out the blue and his eyeballs were too wide to get it up. He called you three times after that to apologize. Last time he seen you though, you had a tight pair of booty huggers with your phone in the back pocket and he death grilled you till you had to go in the bathroom and switch your phone to your front pocket. When you and Fortune done settled in his mama living room, he gonna whip you a smudgy glass of Ovaltine and y'all gonna feel like a family again. Be like, how you open up, Swan? Fortune gonna say, yeah, Swan, how you holding up? Hey, that's daddy to you. Sorry. He gonna turn to you and say, maintain it. Really? It seemed like everybody running around this month like a chicken with their head cut off. Well, that's them. Been 3 months since you've been here. Well, his mama's apartment ain't changed much. She's still holding on to that old-ass vacuum by the futon and padlocking the food cabinet. A whole thing of paper towels is stacked up behind the front door. That got nothing to do with Swan. As far as everybody concerned, he a grown kid living in his mama neat world. Point at the new pair of Jordans with fresh socks hanging out them in his hallway. Be like, where you get them from? They fell off the back of a truck. Fell off the back of a truck, huh? Don't start that. Be like, I'm just saying, I wish baby clothes fell off the back of a truck. See, that's that bullshit. Food and money for doctors' business, I wish they fell off the back of a truck. Mimi, I'm not doing this. I've told you I've been trying. What you want niggas to lie on applications? Fine. I'm gonna write I wasn't locked up. I'm gonna put I went to Harvard. Is that what you want? I want you to try hard is what I want. Stop having your 50-year-old mother work 2 jobs while you out thieving and sitting on your ass, Swan. If I said, Swan, can you help Fortune sell the chocolates the school gave him, you would stand there looking stupid. Stop it. No, Swan, you need to hear the truth about yourself every once in a while. You're a piece of shit that can't contribute $100 a month to support your son and his mother. Stop it, Mimi. You a coward, Swan. If your mother wasn't here working at the school in the airport to put food in your sorry ass mouth, you'd be shut up. Shut up. You a hypocrite, Mimi. Let me ask you this. Why everybody in Banneker think you got it all together? Why I got niggas telling me you going around saying F Swan? I don't need that nigga. Why I hear you going around giving people advice on how to make rent? He not gonna slap you or grab you up. Swan ain't like that. But he will open up the door's top lock and say nothing until you leave. And Fortune will be still sitting on the futon, bobbing to whatever music he got playing in his head. Ring his arm up and say, Fortune, baby, we gotta go. When he said, but I didn't play Swan and Sorghum Boppers yet. You put your hand on your hips and say, Fortune. As you halfway out the door, Swan gonna hit you with the real dagger. Bet you I'm the only nigga in here who know you ain't paid your rent in 5 months. People out here gonna call you ghetto trash. They're gonna say how you got money to deck yourself out for the club but none to pay your bills. They be on TV shaking their heads. I don't get it, they say. It's ignorant. Just last month, you bought a pair of stilettos and a Louis Vuitton suitcase for your next trip to New Jersey. You bought the J-Lo perfume, the Beyonce perfume, and the Miley Cyrus perfume. You bought them Bluetooth speakers at Best Buy. It was on sale, so you stocked up with like 5. You bought anklets from the African Bazaar, the lamp with the water fountain in it, that glass walrus you've seen at Times Square, the moonwalk you rented for Fortune's 7.5 birthday, right after Shima had thrown Taikai's 6.5. Every time you coughed up the money, you said, that's it. I'm saving up from here on out. Until they came out with the new Prada belt line. Of course you could stop spending. Eat no-name cereal and move to that house in Westchester sooner than you think. But it ain't worth coming out the house raggedy. Not feeling good about yourself. You've been through that growing up. Your mama was buying Oshkosh B'gosh and fondling Goodwill bins for blouses that ended up scratching your shoulders. People on TV don't understand that, and never will. They need to stop fronting like all people want in life is food and a roof. You got Shima coming in tomorrow. You gotta dial up Derry and inform him that you don't need his services for this appointment. Derry is the gay dude that lived in 12H. When you first started doing hair on the side, he begged you to teach him. He said, Mimi, I could do this. I got dolls I've been practicing on. Let me sit under your feet and watch you. You ain't gonna know I'm there. I swear, boo. He said, Mimi, you ain't nobody in Banneker gonna let a man touch their hair. You let him wash Klein's hair. And later, while you texturized and braided, had him put on the barrettes at the end, things like that. You hit him off with 20 for his time, because he got nothing else as far as you know. Even though y'all apartments is 2 floors apart, swear you can hear his phone ringing through the walls. When he answered, be like, Derry, it's Mimi, I got good news for you. Oh yeah? Shima pushed her appointment to this Tuesday. I was calling to let you know that I could take care of her myself. He gonna be like, oh no, it's all right. I ain't doing nothing on Tuesday. Be like, no, take the day off. Then hang up the phone. Guess which set of long eyelashes and angry cheekbones gonna be all up in your peephole 5 minutes later? Doing me dirty, meaning he gonna say, laugh it off and be like, I never seen somebody so mad about a day off. You did this to me the last 2 times. You act like you don't want me around. I do, Derry. Remember, this ain't a full-time job. You shadowing me. Then why are you telling me not to come at all? Ask him what he's trying to say. I'm saying to your face and not on the phone that if you don't want me to come on Tuesday, then don't ask me to come any day no more. Let him cross his arms and scrunch them eyebrows and glossy lips of his in your hallway like a dirty photograph. Be like, that's fine, Derry. Do what you have to do. And let me stop right there.
That was amazing. Very easy. Yes, sir. Well, we do the talk. You can have to bring over this chair or bring over this chair. Okay. I'll sit too, and then I can sort of feel. Too. So, yeah. Questions, thoughts. Other than the obvious thing that I already said that was amazing. But yeah, what are you curious about?
I'm thinking about this more remorse, or because of Rush and your ability to compress time where in 25 minutes we just experienced 5 minutes of So does that come from a daily practice, or how does, what's your relationship to time as a writer?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I think in the early drafts, I try to define a set period of time, only because it just makes me think about the beginning, middle, and end a little clearer. And so with this, I was like, I don't know where this story is going, but I want it to take place the 10 days at the end of the month. And that made it easier to like structure it narratively. And so I was like, no matter how long the story is, and this story is 40 pages, I think it's one of the longest stories in the collection. No matter how long the story gets, then I could kind of structure it within that 10 days. So I can kind of like pull out the time and stretch the time. So that's what I was thinking on that particular. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I want to ask kind of a related question. I was thinking about, I've talked sometimes in classes about how a story is made up of lots of small stories.
Mm-hmm.
And this story is like, it seems like you use that structure to where you can put any number of stories about this entire life really within those 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this, like in terms of, are you kind of just living in that life and composing these little stories and then arranging them, or like how does that work for you?
It's exactly that. It's you know, each day is a story, and I was just like, in this odyssey of trying to make rent, what are the weirdest, what are the most disappointing setbacks that could happen to one person, and how can I make them semi-colorful, semi-memorable? And so it is like that. It's like a bunch of little microfictions all tied into one. And I think of like, you know, a classic piece like the Odyssey, where it's just like tons of little, you know, adventures along the way. And I'm like, how can I make a broke man's version of that? You know, Harlem's version of that. Yeah.
Andrew, I saw you.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, how much do you feel like you were drawing on experience, and how much do you feel like you were making up?
Great question. A lot on experience and a lot making up. Like totally, if I were to say what percent autobiographical is this, I would say it's like 0 to 10%. Like, you know, never been me. You know, I've had some difficulties with Rent, but never that colorful, and never had to like, guys, you know, pull all these tricks to make Rent. At the same time, where I grew up in Boston, and then I moved to New York City. So my neighborhood in Boston and my neighborhood in New York, I've met tons of people like Mimi, who are not exactly like Mimi, but have her characteristics, and they're individuals in themselves. But that's a type. It's a type. It's the strong working mother who is just trying to make ends meet, and sometimes has to do really, really creative things. So yes. So my short answer is like, it's not autobiographical, but Mimi's my neighbor, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering, and pardon me, I made it a little late, but I read that you're a high school teacher.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm wondering, how does that interact with, I mean, you know, your writing has a lot of very vivid details and things that might, you know, some people might see as like pushing social like restraints, right? For instance, even something like saying that word. Or swearing. How does that interact?
It's always very scary to say the F word at a college. I'm during the day, I am a high school teacher. I teach 9th, 10th, and 12th graders. We're on spring break, and that's why I can be here. And I've taught the This is my 15th year as a public school teacher. My first school was on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which is very artsy part of town. My second job was in Brownsville, which I would go back to Brownsville. Like if I weren't teaching where I am now, I would go back to Brownsville in a heartbeat. But it is the scariest place, and I've grown up in scary places. So there's Brownsville, and then I teach in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and I live in the Bronx. And even though they're different places in New York City, they all have that connective element of big city, lots of personality, lots of diversity, lots of people who are rich and thriving, but then lots of people who you don't necessarily see regularly. And so, you know, my teaching in public school has really informed that. And I've met students who, you know, are in difficult situations. I've met students who made the best of their difficult situations. And it's always kind of like borderline cringe to write about people who aren't rich. It's always very scary to write about things that could be perceived as stereotypes. It takes a lot of courage, and it's not courage that I necessarily have. I just kind of write what I want to write, but there's always just that little thing in my heart, like there's very little margin of error, and if I mess it up, it's offensive. And my disclaimer is always like, try to give the characters as much humanity as I can. And if it doesn't come across that, this is, you know, first book, and I failed as a writer. That's all it is. And, you know, I'd rather have people think that than think that I was like insensitive. So, yeah, it's a very good issue that you bring up. How the social restraints is appropriate to write about.
I might add though that I was just with you today in a high school where we visited 9th grade, and they read a great poem by another poet and talked about friendship and wrote their own poems, and the F word never came up in that classroom visit. So I think there's like knowing, you know very well who your audience is, and so in those moments he can talk about things that he does and stories that he writes about community and friendships and other things, but then related to something else that's really accessible for students. So knowing who your audience is too.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're growing, so heard that.
I want to ask a question about speech and speaking and its relation to your writing, your composition process. Like hearing these, you know, I'm imagining you speaking the words as you're writing them in a regular sort of back and forth. So I wonder if you could just talk about, for you, the relationship between speaking out loud and writing on the page. Just sort of what you're, you know, are you writing in notebooks and talking? Are you know, what, just the sort of nuts and bolts of.
Yeah. No, I definitely speak the words out loud. I try to see if they sound okay. One advice that I got from a writer named Edwidge Danicott was, and she didn't tell me personally, it would have been lovely if she told me that, but I read it in an article that she like records her voice, and I think that's great practice, reading it out loud, recording it. So a lot of this, just record it and just kind of listen back to it. And I always like to think of this collection as, yes, it's a creative output, but then at the same time, it's about, it's a study of voice. And I think I went into it thinking like, oh, well, I'm portraying Black people in Harlem, and there's a way that they talk, and it's different. And I would revise my thesis a little bit and say that, yes, that's true. It's a little different, but most of it is the same language that we would use. It's more about the syntax and the metaphors. and just subtle word choice. So in the beginning, I kind of did a lot. It was heavy on the like, they gotta say this type of word, and they gotta like, every sentence has to sound like Harlem, when really it's like, no, 95% of it sounds like America, you know, and then 5% of it sounds like Harlem. And so, yes, voice, I've always been very fascinated with voice from the time I've read Push by Sapphire, from what I've read The Color Purple by Alice Walker, and stories by George Saunders that play heavily on the voice. And so that's always been a fascination. I always, like, how do I capture the American voice written on the page?
It makes me, we were talking earlier about poetry versus fiction, and one thing I was so aware of was the sense of a lot of those sentences. You wouldn't even need to know what you were saying if the rhythm of the sentence is making it happen. It seems like I could feel the way you sort of are using these cadences that then sort of gradually become the content of the story, but the cadence. There was that one Ricky Rack. That sentence, I'm hearing that, and I'm thinking like, oh, that's such an amazing sound that you're like, it sort of went in like pure sound at certain moments. It felt like it's here.
Rhythm is important to me, it's great to be on the campus. It focuses like one of the biggest departments is music and music education, and like a lot of this is focused on rhythm and the musicality of things. And just as a hip hop fan, and as a wannabe hip hop artist from back in the day, you'll look at this book and just be like, just know this is the work of a failed rapper. But yeah, so it's like it's a lot of rhythm and musicality that
Where do you feel like most of your writing took place since you were teaching full time? Where did you fit it in?
Yeah, it was tough. I think if I were to give you a tangible, like how many minutes and how many, it would literally be, in the heart of this, it would be like 45 minutes per day. And I know it's 45 because it's like literally fifth period. So I'd be in the teacher's lounge or fifth period, and it's not just me, it's people getting coffee and running copies and whatnot. And then all of a sudden somebody is like complaining about a student. I'm like, oh, let me hear about this. This person's good. Or praising a student. And so lots of distractions. But as you know, with any pursuit, any creative craft, anything that you're ambitious about, and you really have your mindset on it, you just make time. And that, even it's a little bit of time, in my case it was 45 minutes. And I'd always be intimidated by writers who spend 4 hours a day, or even 1 hour. I'm like, I can't even get to 1 hour. And so it was 45 minutes, and then a lot of thinking about it, there's several things that echo in my head that I try to say to myself that are the purpose of them is to like, I don't want to say knock me down to play, that sounds too harsh, but to like level myself is that like, I don't think storytelling is as academic a pursuit as we think it is. Like, I think it's, right now stories are written and that's how we share them, but a lot of stories before writing were told. And I feel like story literacy is something that everyone has and everyone is born with. And a 10-year-old can tell a fantastic story, and you could be any age and decide that you want to tell a story because it's just in you. And I want to think that, oh no, you have to have an MFA and you have to have this, and like, trust me, I want to say that, but then every time I start to feel that, some ninth grader in my class tells a crazy story, and I'm like, I can't compete with that. And so you know, even if I don't have time to spend the 4 hours, I know it's just naturally in me, and as long as I think about it, dedicate a little bit of time, then I can kind of hone it.
So on that, when you create for those 45 minutes and then you go back and you want to do some editing yourself, or maybe you have an editor who's working with you, how do you balance what you're trying to achieve in studying language with, you know, the need for the story to have a narrative arc and to have some character development? I mean, how do you know when it's reached a point where you think it's great?
Yeah, no, that's great. And sometimes the answer is never. Like sometimes it's like looking in the book and you're like, oh, well, that's going out into the world now. And but I think I start with every story. I start with one aspect of creative writing that I focus on. And for me, it's always been the voice. So it's always like, what are these characters saying? And then I just have fun with the voice. And it's kind of jarbled the first couple of drafts. And usually I need a workshop, I need my friends to tell me like, you need to shape it in this way. And the good thing about story literacy is even though I focus on voice, there's just some innate part of you that just makes it a story in a way. Like, and it doesn't come out that way the first draft, the second, but usually somebody else can tell you what the story you're trying to write is. And so I'm trying to think of an example of a story that I wrote where, it's a girl selling candy on the porch. So I wrote a story about the girl selling candy on the porch. I just love that image. When I was growing up in Boston, there was this girl named Toya who one day decided to just start selling candy in the neighborhood. Just did, you know, and she would buy the candy from the corner store, and it'd be more expensive with her. People bought it because they just wanted to be like, I'm buying from Toya. And so I think the first draft was like the image of that, and then the back and forth banter of the girl selling, and it took people to be like, well, there's not a story here, but I think the story you want to tell is the girls make this money and then they kind of lose it in a way. And I was like, oh yeah, that was the story I'm trying to tell. Just kind of just, you know, work every draft to making that clear. That I think if I could have one superpower for writing, it would be like to be able to see those things without having a workshop or other people tell me. Because I've just wasted hours of people's lives telling me this, but you know, it's helpful and I use it to redraft.
Really like how in that example you just gave a lot, just maybe the last consideration of what you're thinking about. That just seems, I love just describe a mural. I think that was great. But my question is a little bit English teachery, so forgive me. But the Red Daniel, that you're writing in second person there, and I love the effect of that. And I wonder if your earlier comment about sensitivity to stereotype can connect up somehow with the choice to use second person, since it like calls you in and it prevents you from, I don't know, I don't know what you think about
Yeah, the first draft of Brent Manual was in first person. It was like, I did this. Let me tell you about this. I think the original title was How I Made Brent Manual. That's what I called it first. It was first person, and So yeah, I knew I was dealing with a lot of stereotypes. There's the single black mom stereotype. There's the dad who's not as involved as he should be stereotype. There's just the poverty stereotype. And the question I asked myself when composing the story, like, do such people exist? And I was like, of course, yes. Like, no matter how stereotypical they are, such people exist. And then the next question was, do they deserve a story? And I was like, yeah, they have a story. The third question is the hardest question. It's like, how do I write a story that gives it a fresh angle? And the second person is something I stole. I stole as with reading. Two writers come to my mind who do the second person very awesome, and it's Junot Diaz and Lori Moore, who I had as a teacher. And she was my professor, and I told her, I was like, I love how you do second person. I'm just stealing that. And I think what makes it great about her, the way she does second person is I feel like there's second person, and then there's what I would call second person imperative, which is what she does. And second person is like, you went to the store, saw a candy bar, and you picked it up. Then second person imperative is like a command. It's like, go to the store, find that enticing candy bar. Right? And I think something is like a more immediate about that, and it tricks you into like not being a story. So you're thinking like, oh, it's a bunch of commands, but really you're being sucked into a story. And so that was kind of like my into that story. And it took me like a whole 3 years to change from first person to the second imperative, but I definitely stole that tool from Lori Moore.
So why this? What got this idea started? Knowing that you're a teacher from the outside, it seems like you could follow each one of your students home, and this is how you come to this story. What made this idea stick with you enough to write about it?
Great question. So it started with the title. So it's the title has only been slightly changed. So the original title in 2006, it took that long ago. 2006, the title I came up with was Stories from Our Tenants Downstairs. And I changed the our from the, because the our sounded like from the perspective of a landlord. So Stories from the Tenants Downstairs. That's all I had was the title. All I had. I was just like, I can work with that, Just like there's rappers who would like just come up with album titles and just song titles. Won't be anything there, but it's like, it sounds okay. And so I came up with that title, and the original stories were Boston, where I grew up from ages 0 to 18, and then New York, where I lived from ages 18 to 39. And so they were stories that were written in prose, just conventional, no voice, and then there were stories that were written with like a flair for voice a little bit, just study of voice. And so as I kept writing, I started migrating more towards one place. And I would say, to be honest, it wasn't even a creative choice. To be honest, between us, it was more like a marketing choice. It was like people who I know from Boston are gonna read Swan, like, oh, that reminds me of blah blah blah. And I'm like, true, that's Boston. But like to have a story take place in like a Harlem and whatnot, it might be a chance that you might get a few more readers. And so I'm not gonna sit here and be like, New York won my heart, because I'm a Bostonian at heart. And so, as for like having like the actual building, you would think that a story called Stories from the Tenants Downstairs, that was one of the most obvious things. So if you're like, oh, tenants in one building. But it literally took 7 years and my agent to be like, maybe this should all be in one building. And so that's what it is. Sometimes it's just the commerce and the people who are in the industry who kind of dictate your choices. And so, yes, a lot of my students, I see a lot of my students as people who would come from this background. I see a lot of neighbors that I grew up in Boston. And I lived in a building called, and this is, I lived in a building called Riverview Towers in Harlem. And I think the structure of like even the 24 floors is a lot like the building that I lived in Harlem.
Okay, let's have one last question. Great.
I was wondering, since there's a lot of students here who want to be writers, if you have any advice for
So my advice is going to be the most cliche advice ever. But the way I will qualify my advice is that I like to think of cliches are empty vessels that need to be filled. So I'm going to say the cliche, but the biggest work is just filling the cliche and making it meaningful. And one is, don't be discouraged. Don't say, I'm too young to do this, or I haven't started yet. And you could start writing as early as possible or as late as possible. And sometimes the more mature you are, the more it informs your writing. So lived experience is great. My advice is to write regularly, whether it's thinking about writing or actually on the page. My advice is to read regularly, and we will define reading as, yes, you can pick up fiction, but it's also watching intelligently is reading, listening intelligently is reading, immersing yourself in different genres, different flavors. I think of a piece like a musical like Hamilton, and then I try to backtrack. What could Lin-Manuel Miranda have read to come up with Hamilton? And it's like the biography of Alexander Hamilton, and then hip hop, and it's like, you know, and so the more different your reading and your experiences with just literature and art, then the more interesting they're going to be. I like to think of every person, again, this is one of those knock me down the peg things, like a writer is just a formula of, how you lived and what you have digested in terms of art. For me, it's all it is. I don't think I have a specific talent, you know, other than like I just try hard and don't give up. But it's like the life experiences I had and the literature and the art that I consumed, and the more you can kind of give yourself that, then the better and more interesting your art will be. And my last one, last advice, is to take advice. Is to take advice, you know? And, you know, I've fallen on different levels of the spectrum with that. There's been times where I've just been like, here's this, tell me it's good. It's not, you know? And then I've been like, I know this needs work, tear it apart, I'm gonna listen to everything you said. And so the rule for me is if 3 or more people are saying the same thing about what my art needs to improve, then I'm gonna take that advice. And I think taking the advice is the hardest one. And that's why when I say, people are like, can I write fiction? I always say, yes, anybody can do it. And just because anybody can do it doesn't mean that it's easy. And the hard part is the taking it. So read, write, take it.
Great, okay, and I hope you'll all take that advice. And yeah, thank you all for coming, and another round of